Okay.
It's a PowerPoint. It's immediately right when you open it. It's called River Ad Hoc.
Can you check those just to make sure? Because it seems like every time we meet, the sound on those is not good.
Where?
The ones for the public. Yeah, it seems like
Tell you what,
Garcetti has to always adjust it.
Okay, there's a reason for that. You shouldn't be adjusting. Those mics are set up at a certain level. If people screw it up, we can't fix that. And what'll end up happening is that the next time somebody else comes in, and then they're complaining like they didn't catch it. Oh, that's too loud. They're set up, they don't have time to go back to the
Yeah, Garcetti ends up adjusting it every time we meet here.
And it's one of those things. We get a soft-spoken person.
Huh?
Oh, heavens to Murray. Hey, Patricia. How you doing?
Animal Services was here when we got here.
Test 1 2.
3 minutes ago.
They're ready to set up really nice right now. We got a sound
Okay.
speaker.
Okay, thank you. Ray sits in the middle. And I already confirmed that Barry's not gonna make it. Garcetti,
The site?
here, and then LaFonge. And then we start in Weiss.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's usually pretty well attended. This guy before everything else.
That Kingston, yeah.
We gotta make sure this Animal Services was meeting here when we got here.
I do. No, it's not on the step. It's not on the step. Can you put it on there and then open it? Well, I hope so. Okay. The ad hoc river thing, you have to pull the whole folder.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
For the river access road. Essentially, what's going to happen is they're just going, your engineer is just
We got both of those. Yeah, you want to, when you do the PowerPoint, let's touch it on. Let's touch it on, yeah, right slides.
the Henry, Henry,
Harry and
I told them that we actually funded the river first. We have to do these now.
Good. It's a very big file.
I'll touch base with the captain.
Okay, so this number here that it's like a bid.
Yeah, for the.
Yes, that will be connected to the police and to the fire. So you guys, you came to we spent lots of and then we'll be there. We also have maintenance. They're going to be connected. So I believe they also senior.
can you lead also talk to her? She will be working with whoever.
Okay.
Eventually once we're ready.
So one of the things you might want to say as you're doing your research, that
Does it work with your laptop?
Yeah.
I think it might be because did you use 2007?
Exactly.
Probably. It's not recognizing the version, is that it?
It's a text file.
yeah.
You normally sit here.
Hi, how are you?
Okay. Little there, yeah. Is there like a trap door? I
Oh
have
no,
no
we
idea.
just crawl over.
Is there a trap door? Just crawl over?
So I guess what you would do is just you're going on second, right? Are you going on second?
I don't know when we're on the agenda.
I think this is the first. Third? You just move this over
Right.
later.
Right.
How you can get on his?
Nobody said we were having a jump.
Just have him move it there.
a different type of session today. We have a joint special meeting, the Hoc River Committee and the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I want to thank Councilmember Garcetti and Councilmember Huizar for being here. Could do just so that we could take advantage of our time is we can get moving on the planning and land use side of it, as well as and Councilmember Garcetti as a member of the Hoc River, and try to cover items 1 and 2, and hopefully we'll get Councilmember Labange. I understand he might be coming, and any other council member of the committee, so that we can move on a quorum basis. So why don't we start with the item number 1, Roberto?
Okay, item number 1 is a categorical exemption, City Planning Commission report and proposed ordinance relative to the amendment of sections 12.04, 12.32, and 13.01, and the addition of section 13.12 to the Los Angeles Municipal Code to establish the LA River Improvement Overlay Supplemental Use District and a new district for vicinities near rivers and tributaries.
Okay, so that does cover item number 1. And I see Roberto on a knee-jerk reaction there, but I'm glad you can join us.
I concur with Mr. Monica.
Thank you, sir. Such power that CLA has. Thank you, sir. And I'd like to welcome Councilor Tom Labange for joining us as well. So that gets us to a full committee status, joint committee. So please take yours. Please introduce yourselves.
Yes. Claire Bowen, Department of City Planning.
Deborah Cahan, Department of City Planning.
And actually, we'd like to do items 1 and 2 together because
Sounds
they
good.
are actually quite linked. And just maybe to give you some background for
Well, if we're going to do that, let's allow the CLA to also describe item number 2.
Item number 2 is a mitigated negative declaration, City Planning Commission report and proposed ordinances relative to the establishment of an LA River Improvement Overlay, which will implement the River Improvement Overlay District and the establishment of an LA River Improvement Overlay fee.
So we take actions. I'll be identifying 2 separate actions, but under 1 report. So go ahead.
Yes, please. Great. Thank you. Good afternoon. And we're here this afternoon largely as a result of the Los Angeles River Revitalization Master Plan, which, as many of you know, directed the Planning Department to develop a river improvement overlay district specifically for the Los Angeles River. And in doing so, in our meetings with the public, we learned very early on that there was interest in perhaps doing similar types of districts for many of the rivers and other kind of tributaries we have throughout the city, which is what led us to determine that it may be beneficial for the city at large to establish a supplemental use district that we would call basically a Rio supplemental use district, which would enable the establishment of particular Rios for different types of tributaries. We could have in the future a Dajunga Wash Rio, a Bayona Creek Rio, et cetera. So what we're proposing today is the establishment of the supplemental use district, and then concurrently the establishment of the first Rio, which is the Los Angeles Rio. And Deborah's going to walk us through what that first Rio is.
I just might like to ask, how many public meetings do you think you've been through in this process? Just ballpark figure, but I just think the folks out in the listening world should, I just want them to appreciate how much work has gone into this.
I would say close to a couple of dozen if we include the meetings we had that were involved with the master plan as well. So at least a couple of dozen.
At least a couple of dozen? I keep saying at least 100. 150 meetings, going back 6 years.
Well, I've only been at the city for 3.
Okay, then I'm reflecting my pain.
I'm thinking specifically.
Let me ask the question, Chair. How many meetings have you been to, sir?
I'd say about 150 at least.
And I guess I'm narrowing it down specifically for the meetings involved with the Rio and the LA Rio.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
Right, which we definitely met with obviously a lot of the neighborhood councils throughout with obviously 32 miles, and a lot of different constituents were involved in this process.
Okay. Good afternoon, council members.
Good afternoon.
So the first Rio River Improvement Overlay, as Claire just introduced you to, is for the Los Angeles River, or the LA Rio. The LA Rio is split up into 3 portions that I'll go over with you today. And up above next to us is an outline of the boundaries of which properties within these boundaries must comply with the guidelines and standards I'm about to go over. The first set is the property improvement guidelines. This is set up as a 3-category checklist by which all projects, including single-family homes, must meet a minimum amount of points within in order to attain their building permit. The 3 categories are watershed, urban design, and mobility. Watershed, the first category, is the only category that single-family homes must comply with. And at this moment, pending your approval, I would like to introduce another point option for single-family homes that was suggested to us by the public recently. And this is to enable a project to obtain a point for certifying their front or backyard as a National Wildlife Federation wildlife habitat. And what this does is what it sounds like, which is go through a certification project that proves that your front or backyard is able to sustain and promote wildlife. Moving forward from watershed, we have urban design. Urban design is intended to promote and maintain a positive interface between the design of projects and the river or the street that it is near, since the LA Rio, as you can see, does not solely touch upon properties that are immediately adjacent. So by creating a positive interface between projects and the street, still maintains a level of positive interface for the river because it enables pedestrian access, bicycle access to be more pleasant and to potentially be more safe because we have these guidelines in place. The third category, mobility, watershed, urban design, and mobility, is to promote linkages between the river and adjacent properties as well as adjacent properties across the river to make connections without the necessity of a private automobile. So some means might be promoting car share programs car share programs or van pool programs, and enabling bicyclists and pedestrians to feel safe on the streets just as vehicles do. Moving on to the Complete Green Street Standards. These are a set of requirements that apply to all projects, again with the exception of single-family homes. It is a series of improvements to take place between the property line and the edge of the curb and include pedestrian street lights, bicycle racks, street trees, and in the case that a parkway exists, native landscaping or drought-tolerant landscaping within that parkway. Moving on to Section 7, we have the Complete Green Street Guidelines. The Complete Green Street Guidelines do not necessarily apply to any or all projects. What they are a set of potential mitigation measures that are sensitive to the fact that these projects lie within a very close proximity to a major asset for the city of Los Angeles. And by mitigating environmental impacts in a means that is sensitive, again, to the Los Angeles River, we can enhance this area and not treat these environmental mitigations in a blanket approach manner, since this area is sensitive for the city of LA.
Does this mean we would have features like permeable streets when new developments come forward? Does that touch on that?
Along those guidelines, I mean, it would be pending what the Public Works is currently able to provide, but it's in that same vein that we're looking for water conservation. Perhaps it would be infiltrating stormwater from the street into the curb and creating reducing stormwater runoff and increasing infiltration and treating this water before. So it does include means to improve water management in a less mechanized way.
Right.
And with that, I'd be happy to open it up to questions and comments.
Council members?
How many people in this room live in the Rio area? Raise your hand. One person, two person. Okay, just want to know. So there's another 100 meetings that we have to go to get through this area, but that's okay, because I think the concept is what we want to try to work to. In your studies, have you seen other cities that transformed with this type of land use designation? Because San Antonio started in like 1928, and that's what
Right.
they say the model is.
We looked at, I mean, the one that's probably closest is the Guadalupe River in San Jose. Did similar things like this that were particularly focused on design guidelines. I mean, obviously, one of the things we're going to be doing as we move forward over time to really make more dramatic changes, will obviously be looking at our community plans and looking for places to actually change land use, which this does not do. I think it's really important to just emphasize that the LA Rio does not actually change land use. It does not impact in any way your developable rights. What it does impose is a required number of guidelines that you have to meet to be able to satisfy improvements in those three categories of watershed, urban design, and mobility.
Right, and there was certain infrastructure that's along the way there, whether it's power infrastructure, distribution facilities, whether it's city yards, whether it's interesting in the Elysian Valley, there's a mixed zoning that's banked up to the river on the,
Right.
what would be one side, and Atwater, it's split zoning, like at Chevy Chase North.
Right, so it doesn't.
How do you explain that, and what if the Community Redevelopment Agency was involved with this at all?
I guess a couple quick things. First of all, would be that this wouldn't change that zoning you just talked about, but it would certainly, if there was a publicly owned property, they would still be subject to these in the future. What was the last?
That's a good one.
What was the one?
CRA.
Oh, the CRA. There are, in this area, there are a number of CRA areas. There's also some other kind of, there's community design overlays, and there are some specific plans, and we've looked at all of those, and fortunately, all the kind of things that they're trying to achieve and that we're trying to achieve in here really work nicely together. And so we've established procedures in this Rio for how you would deal with issues if you were in both.
And some of this in proximity to the, what is now the Union Pacific Railroad right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
How does it affect the railroads?
It does not really affect the railroads at all. Obviously, we're not changing their zoning. And you can't impose these kind of things on them because you've got safety issues. So you can't start requiring them to put landscaping right along their railroad. So it doesn't.
Well, you want it to look pretty.
You want
I mean,
it to
that's
look
one of the things that I think is important. I mean,
Yeah.
but you want to have great separation, or even at some points bury the train tracks altogether.
And I think those are very, very good aspirations. This, unfortunately, doesn't get to that level, and I think that's really where we have to look at other means in the city of being able to kind of make those more those concepts, whether it's the community plan or other kinds of issues.
And then also you got the freeway issue. What do you deal with the freeways and, you know, in some respects?
Well, I think that's why it's so important to create opportunities for connection at the street levels that we have, because even within the streets you have a lot, because you actually go over a lot of freeways, and you've got streets right now that are very inhospitable for pedestrians and bicyclists. So without being able to change the freeways, we're at least trying to make it so that if you were crossing the freeway, maybe we get a chance to look at that bridge and look over
There's a beautiful
time.
picture in the Los Angeles Times. Do you see the Times today?
I did look at the Times. I didn't see the whole.
Did you see the picture? Anybody see the picture?
What picture did I miss?
The Alex Baum Bridge. Anybody see the picture? One, the city engineer saw. He saw a bridge. He looked at it. Okay, that's it. Okay. It's a beautiful picture, silhouette.
What district does that span?
It's your district and my
No, it's
district.
just
I know. I give it a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember? Councilmember?
Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
On great work, and I think you deserve a round of applause for the work that you've done. So, love to give that to you because you toil away in silence sometimes. But one of the things I'd like to see is us do, Mr. Chair, as a complement to this, is some of our city design standards and regulations to be in complement with this, because this is essentially for the private sector. When there are things that affect the public, I mean, we have to abide by it too, but it essentially is going to be private sector and private individuals and developments. And maybe we can work with our city engineer, but as we look at, and we're doing this in a piecemeal fashion, I think it's much better than where we were, but as we look at road improvements, as we look at repaving, as we look at all those projects, whenever it's close to the river, we haven't yet developed standards that are similar to this, and I think this is a good jumping off point for where we can do that on the public side. Is that something that you heard about? Is there any way you'd recommend doing that, or should we kind of send that over towards city engineerdom?
Well, yeah, I think you got the city engineer, and you also have Commissioner Daniels in the back, and I think that they both have done a terrific job and are continuing to do a terrific job to help bring the city together in that realm. I mean, obviously, Commissioner Daniels is spearheading the Green Streets Committee, of which Planning Department is participating, as well as Bureau of Engineering and other departments, to really look at how we can be throughout the city, and particularly in our areas near our tributaries, be looking to create opportunities for infiltration through the use of our city streets.
I mean, maybe what we can do is we can have a motion to ask our Department of Public Works to look at city regulations that would be in line with the both policy and design aspects of the Rio plan, And the reason why I say that is I think we've got a very progressive Board of Public Works, we've got a progressive set of general managers, we have a progressive mayor and council, but it would be nice to embed these things, because oftentimes for the departments, if it becomes a regulation, that's the way that we'll do it across the board much more uniformly. Well, instead of just paving the street, we have to figure out a way in the cul-de-sac here leading up to the river to make it a partially paved street, where there'll be some infiltration, even if we can't do a clear, green street for it. But to make that not just a policy initiative of us, but something that's a requirement internally, I'd love for us to dig into.
I'll second that, and that's a verbal motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, then I'll second that motion, and that'll be a directive. When the public comes into this area, and with these design guidelines, my assumptions are that this notion of a riverfront district will be much more visible, and given the built-out environment with all the different cues of, how the trees look, and the street furniture, and the nature of the curves, and the way the streets are going to be designed, that folks will know that they are getting close to the river. Correct?
Yes.
So that's, okay. Just want to make sure that was on the record. All right, I too want to say congratulations, and I know it's been a hard work, but I think it's worthwhile, and I've already come across a couple of proposals that were coming towards some level of development, and we were able to review them and reorientate the building. We sent them to you guys, and they understood, and they were very amenable to these changes. So I think clarity helps a long way for the private sector to get things done. So this will be very much appreciated. So congratulations and good luck. Thank you very much. So the actions of this committee, as far as item number one is to vote to recommend. We will. The council will adopt, the committee will adopt the CPC report and its findings, the category exemption and proposed ordinances, and forward that to council. And can we take a vote on that?
Aye.
All right. Okay, that's all in
Aye.
favor? For item number two, we will adopt the CPC report, the mitigated negative declaration and proposed ordinances, and forward that to council as well. And I vote yes, all the way across the board. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that'll be the actions of committee's items number 1 and 2.
Councilman Reyes, I think for item 1, you need to instruct the city attorney to prepare the ordinance.
Okay, so we will instruct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance. That'll be the
Now,
action.
can I just ask a question? There was only 2 people who lived in the zone here. What kind of outreach are we doing in the weeks ahead so that we're successful? Because sometimes people hear something, they get afraid when they hear this type of thing. What kind of outreach do we have planned?
Well, we have our websites that are made available. I think these design guidelines will be visible as new projects come forward, and that's where you'll see these changes. But
Yeah, I think, just to answer your question, we've done a huge amount of outreach, and I think it actually, we don't have a lot of people here because we've been largely hearing support for this ordinance. We had 2 public hearings in advance of the CPC, and the people who came were all in favor of it, and we had a number of people come to the CPC.
We're not condemning anybody's property.
We're not condemning any properties, we're
You
not
gotta
changing their developer
I know,
rights.
I met a woman who still goes, like I don't, who still goes to church like every day. Okay, and she was telling me how afraid she was because of in 1960, and she went back to the 50s when the freeway came through and what happened to some of her neighbors on Riverside Drive. Anyway, I just wanted to be cautious to
Right.
make sure we say this in a positive way, that it's not going to take anybody out of their homes.
That's correct.
There'll be a public process to anything that we do, so that people are assured this, because I remember the last time we had this discussion before, there was some people who were very concerned that it didn't
Right.
have everything to protect that.
Yeah, I'd like to add,
Please,
excuse me.
please.
I'd like to add something to that. When we had our public hearings back in December, there was extensive outreach because we understood that that was the most appropriate form for public outreach,
Right.
or perhaps the best. So, in addition to the thousands upon thousands on our continuing stakeholder list, we also always let all of our neighborhood councils know, as well as advertising in all the newspapers, so that local communities along the river can catch wind of the
Right.
of the meetings. And To reiterate what you had said, I think these are very important points. Not only do we not condemn any property, we also do not change any zoning, and we do not build anything or enable anyone to build anything where they couldn't build before. In other words, what you could build before potential LA Rio adoption and what you can build after is exactly the same. It's the manner in which you build it. It's how you build it.
Right.
So we're not taking away any property rights in any form.
We do it in multiple languages in the,
Yes, we did it in Spanish and we did it in English.
I think you should do it in Chinese too, right? So, but anyway, work with all of us to make sure we get it out.
Right.
I think that would be helpful.
That's something we can link to our websites, what
Yes.
this means, and
Yes,
get it back to the River website as well, and then that'll be great. I just want to make sure that for both items 1 and 2, we would require the city attorney to work on that ordinance, and we would expect that to happen. So just for the record, I want to make sure that was clear. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, great job, guys. Okay, so takes care of items 1 and 2. Let's go to item number 3.
Item 3 is motion of the bond.
Okay, I'm jumping the gun here. I have Mr. Clyde Williams. Come on up, Mr. Clyde Williams. And Barbara Monahanberg, come on up. There's a microphone for you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno. It's a little late now. The vote's already been taken.
It's reconsidered now. It's before us, so don't worry.
Go ahead.
Okay. One of the elements here is the relationship of the cornfields to cornfields Arroyo Seco plant, specific plan. This is where it's all going to be brought down to a specific plan which will give ministerial exemption thereafter. So we're responding to the notice of preparation for the cornfields Arroyo Seco primarily as a reflection as to how this plan will be applied. One of the elements is what is the relationship of the negative declaration to the current NOP for the EIR. Where's the interface? Where's a map that shows the relationship of specific plans to the river plan? Yes, I do not live in the area. I live in El Sereno. However, 4 members of the neighborhood council was at the CASP presentation, 4 of 6 people in the outreach. But anyway, the major element that I see is that the CASP is the first real implementation of your Rio plan. And we were not very happy with it because geology and soils were considered as not even important, although the area is underlain by several major fault systems. I did work for 4 to 5 years for the Metro Rail Red Line Phase 1 through this area. And we had considerable problems with oil field elements, with the geology of it, with potential for liquefaction when we were building the stations and the tunnels. We also experienced large amounts of gasoline and large amounts of methane in the tunnels and had to do ventilations. We also encountered in the groundwater very high levels of H2S, sufficient that we had to spend $4,000 a day just for the physical plant to treat the groundwater. These areas are underlaying the entire area up to the Arroyo Seco, but they were not considered sufficient to even be categorized within the CASP. I have not read the mitigated negative declaration because, again, I'm considering the CASP as being the application of this particular element.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Just to respond on some of those points, these are urban design guidelines. So any and all structural issues that deal with impacts will have to go through their respective processes. This does not change the zones, any kind of mitigation or any kind of declarations of status of the earth. But any project will have to go through its due diligence. So this does not give anyone any shortcuts. does not give anyone any kind of leeway as to avoid following the law. This is just about urban design guidelines.
Specifically on the natural habitat with the Audubon Society. In the CASP, they did not consider this to be any biological significance.
Right. Well, the specific plan, it will go through its own EIR process.
Yes, I understand that.
That's separate. Okay. Thank you, sir. Ms. Burke?
Barbara Monahan Burke, Studio City Neighborhood Council, and my address is 4223 Wilkinson Avenue, Studio City. We had attached a CIS, a Community Impact Statement, in the beginning on this, and I know I discussed it with Councilman Reyes and Council President Garcetti at that point. And we have worked with the engineering department and the planning department really carefully on this and are very happy with that. But in the meantime, as well as before, we do have a unique combination of history, landscape, and zoning designations, and we are built out right to the river. It goes the whole length of Studio City, and we really are active on it. So we do have this community impact statement, and we had added amendments to that so it would stay on file with this, so that down the line, when other people were council members and were on neighborhood councils, we would have a history within this document of Studio City. So I asked that the CIS with its amendments be reinstated as part of this document.
Okay.
To just go along with it.
Yeah.
So we aren't asking for
No
the
problem.
EIR specifically because you're working with us very well, and we thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
But we do have a lot of problems with things.
That's fine. We will make sure it's attached.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arturo Gonzalez.
Hello, my name is
afternoon.
Arturo Gonzalez. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Arroyo Seco Foundation, and my comment is regarding item number 1 and 2. We just wanted to mention our support for the Rio Improvement Overlay District. We think it's great, and we also really appreciate it, not just addressing the LA River, but also the rivers and tributaries which flow into it.
Great. Well, thank you for your hard work, too. I know it's not easy, so thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so we'll have to vote again on items number 1 and 2 since we opened it up. And ask for an aye vote for 1 and 2?
Yep.
Yes.
Across the board? That'll be the action of this committee with all previous directions that have been articulated. Okay, item number 3. I think I covered all my bases.
Item 3 is motion Labange Gruel on requesting the California High-Speed Rail Authority to provide a status report on the state's proposed high-speed train system, including an anticipated timetable for decision-making and project implementation as it will affect Southern California.
Great. I want to thank Councilor Labange for his motion, along with Councilor Gruel. I'd like to ask the authority to come on up. And welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and for inviting us to give you this briefing. And also, I want to thank all of you, as well as anyone in the audience who have voted for Prop 1A. Thank you very much, because by doing that, you made it possible for California to have a high-speed rail. Until that time, the whole idea of high-speed rail was some kind of a vision in some people's head and not necessarily that real. But since then, it's become very real and doable, and it is going to happen. In addition to that, we are very happy that the new president, Obama, is very excited about building high-speed train throughout the nation, and this identified this as one of his high priorities. And because of those things, it's becoming more and more imperative that we work all very closely together to make this project happen as quickly as possible. And I want to emphasize the fact that my board is fully committed to building a high-speed train throughout the state and trying our best to be as good of a neighbor as we can. And throughout the whole discussion about building the system, our objective is that wherever there is a high-speed train built, that when we finish, the neighborhood is better off than they were before, that we don't create a great deal of negative impact in the communities, and we want to work with the communities. I want to thank you especially for your years of working with us and working with the staff and trying to keep us informed of some of the issues that you've been concerned with, and we look forward to continuing to work with you in that area. I'm going to go quickly.
Can I just ask you to pause for a second? Just identify yourself and your title.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to do that. Thanks.
My name is Mehdi Morshid. I'm with the High Speed Rail Authority, and with me I have Dan and Jean, who are going to talk about different parts of the project.
And you're the executive director.
I'm the executive director of High Speed Rail, and I'm responsible for trying to make this happen.
Thank you, sir.
And I've been also working on this for about 15 years, and it seems like it was just yesterday, but it's good to be here and good to be talking about this. And briefly, before I also go into that, I want to let you know that because we don't have a high-speed rail, and I have to catch a flight to Sacramento, and unfortunately it takes twice as long to go from here to the plane than it takes to get to Sacramento. If we had high-speed train, that wouldn't be the case, but I need to leave maybe before the meeting is over. Let's talk about high-speed rail, and most of you already know we're talking about building a 800-mile system throughout the state. It's going to take a number of years, obviously, to build it, but it's the type of train that's steel wheel on steel tracks, similar to the TGV or Shinkansen trains or the ones in Spain and other places. We are planned to be 100% electric. In addition to that, our board has adopted a policy that we will try to provide the 100% of the power through renewable resources, which will be actually the train operation will be a zero emission train. We will be operating at maximum operating speed of 220 miles per hour. It will be completely grade separated, and it will be extremely safe and reliable. The safest mode of transportation known to mankind are the current high-speed rails operating in Japan and Europe. They've been operating in Japan since 1966, carried billions of passengers, and there hasn't been a single fatality as a result of that train operation. The same thing in France. They've been running since 1982, again without a single fatality, and you can't find any mode of transportation that can match that. Our source of funding, this is about $34 billion project for the phase one, which is San Francisco to Union Station to Anaheim. And the legislature has provided a $9.9 billion bond measure for the high-speed rail. And so that's about a little less than a third of the total cost. We anticipate to get another third from the federal government and the final third from private sector and local entities, mostly private sector. And the reason we think we can get money from private sector, because our data shows that once you operate the high-speed train, it will actually generate a considerable amount of surplus revenues that you can use to capitalize it toward the construction. It's not like the regular public transit that once you build it, you still have to subsidize it for its operation. This will actually generate surplus revenues. The source of bonds, obviously, you voted for $9.95 billion in bond. $9 billion of that is for high-speed train. The other $950 million is for other urban transit systems such as Metrolinks and metros and others that are actually going to assist and link with high-speed train, because as we all know, a high-speed train by itself is not going to be nearly as effective as it could be when it has very good interface with other public transportation system within urban areas, so people can begin and end in their entire trip on a public transportation system rather than driving. The system, these are some of the benefits that obviously are going to be coming to California. Foremost is the fact that we all know that the Congress has passed this stimulus package. Included in that is $8 billion for high-speed rail, which was actually specifically put in there at the request of the president. And California is in the best position to attract most of that money, if not all of it, but that we don't think we get all of it, but I think we will receive a substantial amount. As by doing this, we create over 54,000 jobs by 2020 and 96,000 by 2035. We will, infuse an additional 2 to 4% in the Los Angeles economy, and our annual income on the Los Angeles household, based on our assumption and calculation, will increase by about $800 per family of 4. And in addition to that, the high-speed train and the jobs and the businesses and the activities that will be created from high-speed rail would add to about $350 million per year to LA County's tax revenues. Those are some of the benefits of high-speed train once it's built, and the challenge is building it. And as you can see, this is some of our ridership and revenue studies, is that the Los Angeles Union Station is essentially the ground zero for this high-speed train. It's the largest station with the largest number of passengers that are going to use the high-speed train system, over 10 million passengers per year. That's bigger than as big as some of our medium-sized airports. So this is going to be a very, very large operation at the Union Station. And in and around Union Station, we want to work with all of you, trying to make that station a first-class station and a good neighbor for the community that's going to be in that area. With that, I'm going to turn it over, I think it's to Dan or Jean, to go over that. And if I have to leave early, I apologize, because, like I said, I do need to catch the Southwest flight to Sacramento.
Out of Burbank or LAX?
Can't take the train now.
Burbank, okay.
Thank you, Mehdi. My name is Gene
You can
Kim.
take the train to Burbank, though? You could do that. Metrolink has
I refuse to answer that question.
Plead the fifth.
Thank you. My name is Gene Kim. I'm the planning manager of the design team for the Orange County to LA section. After I get through with sort of my points I'd like to get across to the Ad Hoc River Committee, I'd like to hand it over to Dan Templis, who's the manager of the Palmdale section north of Union Station. Our corridor that we're designing is from Anaheim, the planned Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center, to Union Station. It's along the existing Losan corridor, where there's currently freight, Metrolink, and Amtrak service. In terms of our design, we've sort of broken it up into 3 sections, and what I'd like to focus on is the 3rd section, the section really from Hobart Yard at the Redondo Junction area, across the LA River, into a station location in or next to Union Station. Okay. What we have here is a map of Union Station. It's actually slightly skewed. North is kind of going to the left. So if you can sort of envision, north is sort of this way to the left. And what we have is a map here of 2 alignments. One is of an alignment kind of staying along the west bank of the LA River, serving a station called the West Bank Station. The other is an alignment serving Union Station at this location right here. And one of the biggest challenges for our project is determining the best site for a high-speed train station. There are a number of constraints along the west bank of the LA River. There's a Metrolink rail yard to the west side. There's also a City of Los Angeles Pipertech facility. It's the nation's largest general services facility in the country. Also, there's a Metro Regional Rebuild Center that's just to the west of the Los Angeles River. And the opportunity that we have is to integrate high-speed trains into the region's largest transportation hub, and that's Union Station. Next click, Dan. Currently, Metrolink and Amtrak trains stay along the LA River along the alignment that's shown in red, and they stub end 160 degrees right now at Union Station. There are plans underway for something called the run-through tracks that would allow for through movement at Union Station. Neither of those alignments can be used by high-speed rail. We have to come up with basically our own set of tracks and infrastructure to serve what we think is the most appropriate location for a station. Next slide, Dan. So the blue line right here shows the alignment of a high-speed train tracks into Union Station. I think the key here is that it's the station location itself that drives the alignment. And as Mehdi said, we are very, very concerned about finding the most appropriate location from planning criteria in terms of connections, getting people from public transit to high-speed rail, and then coming up with an alignment that allows us to do that, that creates the least amount of impact to the communities around Union Station. The second alignment, which is shown in green, serves a West Bank station. We believe that this station, in terms of connections, is not as desirable as Union Station because it's around 1,800 feet away. Some type of connection, a walkway or a people mover or shuttles have to be put in place in order to get people from Union Station to this West Bank site. Okay. And then the issue that Dan will talk about in greater detail is how we go about bringing tracks further north of Union Station to an alignment that makes the most sense for the community and for high-speed rail. Next slide, Dan. What we have here is, I'd characterize it as a somewhat crude visual rendering of the alignment looking north into Union Station. So you can see the LA River sort of to the right there, and our alignment really has to go onto some type of viaduct structure, an elevated structure that crosses over a couple things. The First Street Bridge. There are some developments that we are very mindful of. One, Santa Fe, is one that we've noticed and designed around. We're also aware of the location of a Buddhist temple that we have tried our very best to avoid.
And Santa Fe is where the subway sleeps at night? Where's one Santa Fe? No, it's not built yet.
It's the Red Line Yard is where the subway is.
It's not built yet.
It's not built yet.
That should
It's
be a
development.
subway stop right now. But anyway, the guy who was building it didn't want to do it, but it should be.
Okay.
And there should be access to the art district.
Okay. And just to finish up this slide shows an alignment that goes above the 101 and into a aerial platform zone above the existing Metrolink and Amtrak tracks in between Union Station and Gateway. I think the key point here is that the redevelopment of the transit corridor to accommodate high-speed rail has no impact on the existing Union Station structure. From the authority standpoint and the design team standpoint, we're very, very mindful of the historic nature of Union Station, and believe that it's very important going forward to come up with ideas and concepts that are able to sort of marry the requirements of the high-speed train platform and the high-speed train facility with the historic nature of Union Station, yet make it a showcase piece for the 21st century. At this point, I would like to hand it over to Dan Templis, who will talk about Union Station and the alignment north of Union Station.
Before you leave that section, has the Council District 9, Councilmember Perry, has her staff been engaged in this discussion, and what's the nature of their response?
Yes, the authority over the past 6 to 8 weeks has met with city council districts, with the mayor's office. We had a briefing with Councilwoman Perry's district about 3 weeks ago, sat down with her and her staff to discuss the alignment off of the Los Angeles River. And we heard that there were very strong concerns because of community plans that they currently have in place for the arts district. The authority is very interested in working with Councilwoman Perry's district and with city planning to identify any and all methods to mitigate the impacts associated with a structure like this. And we're just now starting that conversation. Okay. So concerns about whether open space could be made available, whether there are opportunities to help mutually preserve community goals in the arts district while supporting the needs of high-speed rail are of paramount concern to us. So we are moving forward, continuing that dialogue.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
If you could elaborate on why you can't use existing rights of way for other rail lines that go there now. I mean, technologically, I suppose that's why you can't, but can't you remove some of that other type of technology that's currently being used and put in new rail lines that could be used by all of the different freights that use it?
We could use the existing tracks and the existing corridor along the west bank of the Los Angeles River. If we did that, that would require us to build a high-speed train station that was essentially away from the Union Station complex by around 1,800 feet. Our marching orders are really to come up with a location, a site for high-speed trains that provides the best connections for high-speed train passengers and fits into the existing transit system. That location, in our professional judgment, is Union Station. There is an existing platform transit zone in between Union Station and Gateway that would provide, we think, the ideal location for an elevated transit zone, transportation zone for high-speed rail. That will require us to come up with some creative ideas to get an alignment through there. We're very mindful of what it involves, taking the tracks off of the existing railroad corridor, and we are working very hard to come up with the best design and to share those designs with the council districts in the city.
If I could just ask a question, have you ever thought of building everything you need at like 4th and Santa Fe and moving, you have a subway connection there, because that's where the subway yard is. You have rail yard there. We're talking about something that may not be built for 9 or 10 years if you catch your flight and things go forward, right? This is not something that's going to happen in 3 to 5 years. It's going to happen in 9 to 10 years.
In terms of timing, and you'll see a schedule here that we were looking at maybe 4 or 5 years, 6 years into time frame in terms of building that. Now with the requirement of this stimulus money, and if we focus on building the LA to Anaheim section as a section, then we're going to be driven by the very tight schedule that is on the.
Okay, so just
we may actually end up building that much quicker then.
What Mr. Weezer said, and understanding the concerns that the 9th District expressed, Ms. Perry, and understanding that to be successful, you have to have everybody on a pole, from high-speed rail to Metrolink to subway to the number 32 bus, all coming through that one place. What if you moved, Union Station's still going to be there. There's a light rail that's going to be there. There's a heavy rail that's underneath there in the subway, but it comes to the river. Have you ever envisioned building everything in the 4th Street area if you had to? Instead of building where Piper Tech is. Have you ever thought of that? You look like...
I don't know.
Yeah. And if not, could you think about it? Because I think that may solve some of the solution. And being, Union Station, and I love Union Station, as all of us love Union Station, but the key is to make everything on top of each other. To move it to the east still means you have 2,000 feet to get to a train. And also I would say to all members here, go to Berlin and see what they did in the reconstruction of their city when the wall that separated them and how they put their main station together in a tremendous form. You've been to Berlin?
No, I have not.
Have you any of you been to Berlin?
I've not been there, no.
You have to have been to Berlin.
I've seen pictures, no.
You've seen pictures. That's just saw pictures.
I saw the movie.
Anyway, it's amazing what they did, because it does that. So
it's true.
All people should go to Berlin. I sound like John Kennedy. but I think it's amazing what they did. And I'm just saying this idea, what Mr. Weejar just said, Mr. Reyes is expressing the concerns of Ms. Perry. Maybe you could think about something on the river that does transform a whole area. We're looking at the next century plus for this system. This is Union Station. There was a train station there. The Santa Fe, I believe, was there at one time. And Union Pacific had its own, and Southern Pacific had its own. Anyway, think about that. Keep going. And I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I just want to throw one more thing before we leave this section, is because it is a Union Station, it's very significant. In discussions with MTA and their whole need to create a facility that is a maintenance yard that fulfills their needs for the network that they're building out. It just seems to me when you have a capital expenditure at that level, and one of the areas they have looked at has been what they call a piggyback yard, and that Union Station controls. It's a really large facility, and the notion of leveraging, I just can't help but think, if we expand our scope, if you will, knowing that in all great cities you have 2 or 3 major train stations, given how big they are. I mean, you've got big ones. My staff was sharing with me, in New York you have more than one station. Chicago, you have more than one. Los Angeles, we have only one. And yet we have all of these needs being compressed into a very tight area. I just want to put that out there as food for thought. Because if MTA is looking at that piggyback yard, and they did get their their measure passed as well, their proposition, is there room for flexibility, is there room for leveraging, so that we can build out a facility that is indicative of a international world-class city, and that's just, I just want to put that out there. Sir.
Sure. My name's Dan Templis. I'm the project manager for the segment that goes from Los Angeles Union Station to Palmdale. Over the course of the last couple of years, we've been focusing primarily downtown and heading north to as far as the 134 freeway, with the idea of really encompassing the alternatives that come in from the south and how those alternatives get tied together going north, so that we have a continuity of solutions, if you will, for those alternatives. So what we have here at the existing Union Station, if you can see, is the shaded area, and then I've got different colors that show different cross-sections, if you will, of what high-speed rail will look like. Given that Union Station, as Gene spoke, is an above-ground option at Union Station, you can see in the blue there crossing the river. That's following the existing Metrolink entrance to Union Station through here onto the other side of the river in blue on a viaduct. So it's over the existing entrance to Union Station and those existing Metrolink tracks. And then what we're doing is we're crossing the river to the other side, and you can see we're in white right there. That particular section would be at grade, where we would be side by side with Metrolink and the other uses on that side of the river. And then you can see the green portion there. That is actually a portion that would be in a trench. Now, in this particular case, I've shown high-speed rail by itself in a trench, but it could be high-speed rail shared side by side with Metrolink, and I've got some examples of that here in a minute. And then as we get towards the 110 here, we have the Arroyo Seco coming in. We have to get back up to grade there, so we're at grade at that particular location. Now, this is another alternative we have coming out of existing above-ground Union Station. Again, you can see the blue is a viaduct that comes straight out of Union Station and then comes down Main Street and then turns north along the river, going over Spring Street and Broadway, and then coming back down to grade as we cross the river, heading north towards Taylor Yard. So these are two alternatives that we've been studying as it relates to an above-ground option at Union Station. Then as we head north through Taylor Yard, you can see we have, in Rio de Los Angeles State Park, you can see we've got two alignments going through this particular area that we're currently liking to study. The first follows the historic, or the current, I should say, Metrolink alignment through here, and the other actually runs down San Fernando Road. Now you see these are both in green, and these are options that are actually in a trench, where it would be a side-by-side configuration like this, where it could be treed around it, but we would have Metrolink and high-speed rail in the bottom, and then periodically what we can do at these locations is actually cover it over so you have some continuity between the surrounding community and the surrounding parks. So you don't have this hard division that you currently have with Metrolink as it exists now. And we can do this wherever we go into a trench. There are limitations to how far we can cover this. We can cover it as much as 800 feet. If we go longer than 800 feet, then it becomes a tunnel under regulatory requirements, and each one of the rails need to be separated by a barrier wall. So high-speed rail would have to be in a wall. It would have to be completely walled off from the current diesel operations, and the diesel operations really can't go into a tunnel because of the complexity of ventilation.
Can you go back?
Sure.
To the earlier slide?
This one?
That one, yeah.
Yeah.
How long is that stretch along the park? Do you know?
Through here?
Yeah.
The whole length of the park? I don't know, that's probably 1,000 feet or so.
Okay.
I've got a simulation here in a minute that'll really show how this
How
might
many
work.
feet is a mile?
5,280.
Okay.
So here's an actual simulation of what this might look like. And as you can see here, this is the existing condition right now. This is looking north through, this is the 5 looking north. This is the maintenance yard now, and this is the current Metrolink alignment. You can see the train is moving along the current alignment with the existing uses that are there today. Here's Rio de Los Angeles State Park. This area is currently planned for housing, high-density housing. Here's the old rail maintenance facility, again looking north. And this is the existing condition as we see it today, heading north down San Fernando Road on this side. Now this next alternative, you can see now we've put high-speed rail side by side with Metrolink. There's 4-track in this particular configuration. Going north again, now following the existing Metrolink alignment. You can see we've actually put the development in Rio de Los Angeles State Park. And you can see we've greened this area here, but you can see we've covered it over in certain locations. So you have continuity between the river and the adjacent park use or residential housing. And we can lid these over, as I said, as much as 800 feet, hopscotching it along the alignment. And this is the other alternative that we've been looking at. Again, this is now down San Fernando Road. And now we've got, again, high-speed rail and Metrolink in a shared trench. You can see as we've come up to the residential housing area that's planned here, we've covered it over with a nice green area. We can put parking elements over this as well, playing fields, anything that we need to or would desire to. And then again, it's opened, and then again, as we go through the park, it's covered. Then it's open again, and then it's covered, and this just continues on through that particular alternative. So this is an opportunity where we could take Metrolink side by side with us and try to improve some of the surrounding area. And we've done this with the idea, based on conversations that we've had about how we might be able to improve this. And this is just one of the solutions that we've come up with.
And I appreciate the response, because I know from the get-go, he's back in the early 90s with our first letters. And about 6-7 years ago, our conversation on a statewide conference call, we've been very consistent with these messages, and it's good to see that you're listening and you're being responsive, so truly appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think the one of the key factors, and we shared this in another meeting, is the scope and the framework of the EIRs and making sure that we minimize the separation of Union Station because of these impacts of these sensitive areas, and how we're able to fold that in. And I just want to repeat that for the record, and I appreciate your response to that and your eagerness to see how we can work together to identify that framework so that the community feels that it's being listened to and that we are actually looking at the mitigation based on the most critical impacts that we see as it converges into Union Station.
Mr. Chairman, let me state that since confirm our early conversation that as you requested, I'm instructing our engineering and planning team to move ahead and increase the sphere of influence for the Union Station to go more than the mile that they're currently working on, to include that the northern part of the Union Station in the environmental document, that we can actually early on determine what needs to be done, and if we need to do any mitigation for that, to actually try to get it included in the early phase of the planning, and whether it's federal stimulus money or state bond money or whatever else it is, that to be part of the same kind of a package, and we will do that.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or observations from my colleagues on this?
I just think you got to do it right. It's very sensitive, that whole corridor. And if you could combine the other railroad facilities in there all at once, and then retain land that's open for the parks. I know you got tunnel requirements or whatever, but it certainly makes sense. And then as you go north up to the 134, just at the grade separation, make sure that it's safe for people, because it will be. I think I didn't know, Ed, is that it takes for every mile you need 1% to turn, or you like a straight line.
Yes.
But if you have to turn a little, you got to explain what the 1% means.
Well, the radius of curvature at the 220 miles per hour is over 5 miles.
Right.
This system has to be very, very straight in order to attain the speeds that are desired, and the state requirement, the Prop 1A requirement was 2 hours and 40 minutes from LA to San Francisco, and we really need to try to achieve that. However, recognizing some of the challenges that we have down here in Los Angeles and getting into Union Station and trying to monopolize on the opportunities that we have, there's going to be some sacrifice in terms of time in order to achieve these things, and I think these are things that we're willing to take a look at.
Yeah, and one of I think it's a very important factor to point out is that in designing the system, whether we're looking at the radius of the curvature or whether we're looking at the percent grade and how fast you go up and down, are primarily are not decided by the characteristic of the train or the track. The reason for those are actually for passenger comfort. That the idea is that if you're a passenger, you want to be comfortable, and if you have a cup of coffee or a soda or something in front of you, you don't want to turn fast enough that the coffee ends up in the next passenger's lap. So those are the factors that we have. It goes into design of the system. It's because I've heard people say, well, such and such a train can climb at 300 miles an hour at 10%. Well, yeah, you can, but they're not going for a roller coaster ride.
Right, I got that. Right.
Well, colleagues, I do have some additional instructions, if we can, to complement. If not, it's a friendly amendment to the current motion. That would be to direct planning department to work with DOT and the other appropriate city departments to assess the impacts of the high-speed rail current routes on the city community plans and goals, and the Los Angeles River Revitalization Master Plan, and other specific plans that fall within the proposed routes. Direct planning department to work with DOT, its city task force, and other appropriate agencies to establish a cohesive city vision and official city position on alignments. And C, direct planning departments report back in 30 days to Plum and Hoc River with a status report and recommendations that will result in an official city position on high-speed rail alignments through the impacted communities. And D, these instructions amend the current motion and are to be submitted as part of the Hoc River Committee recommendation to the council. So what we're trying to do is fold in the community plans. The specific plans will be impacted. Through that planning phase and that planning process, we can assess how we are going to fold in all the different stakeholders through a more formal process. And if we can get in front of it ahead of time, it won't slow down your progress and your timeframes, and work within the challenges that we all have in realizing and making this project a reality. So could I have a second on that motion?
Yes.
Okay. So that'll be back to this committee. We do have some public speaking cards, unless there are any other questions.
I can just ask a question. If you, I don't have a train to catch, but I have a son to get at school, and I have a wife who's going to beat me hard if I don't get it. Not beat me, I should have said that. I apologize. Strike that for the record.
Beat you.
She don't do that. I apologize. I got in trouble. Could I be excused?
Be excused. For the sake of your own welfare, Tom. Okay, we do have Louis McAdams on item number 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for all your help. Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. Exciting. More simulation.
He actually paid this model for us. Northeast and
just thank you for letting me say a few words. Well, I've talked to other board members of Friends of the Los Angeles River, and we have all believed that the high-speed rail is inevitable and necessary. We're going to be extremely following very closely this alignment issue. And I'd like to take it a little further, and I'd like to see if there's any way that this can be part of an amendment to this motion, which is to see that the arrival of high-speed rail leads not only to reinforcing the industrialization of the riverfront, but actually leads to change in the industrialization of the riverfront, so that we can leverage the money that this is going to bring to help restore the river in the most industrialized and most difficult to access of the entire Los Angeles River.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. McAdams. Okay, seeing no one else for public comment, that'll conclude this item. We'll lead to item number 5, I believe.
Item number 4, actually.
4, okay.
Item number 4 are status reports from the Bureau of Engineering and the City Planning Department on the establishment of an LA River Special Projects Office and the implementation of the LA River Revitalization Master Plan, respectively.
Great. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Gary Moore, with the Bureau of Engineering, joined with Carol Armstrong here. Our report, Daryl Buxton is also here from the Army Corps. If he can join us up here, that'd be great. Our report here, I'll focus in on one part of the, 2 parts of the report. One, we expect the County Board of Supervisors to consider the river memorandum of understanding in early April. So we're very anxious to see the county adopt what your city council has already adopted. Next thing I'd like to focus in on is the Army Corps study, the Los Angeles River Ecosystem Feasibility Study. We've been working together with the Army Corps on this. They are the lead of this project here. And what we've come up as the study's gone on is they've asked for certain funding, and that funding didn't quite meet their needs. And so there has been, the study has slowed down a little bit here, and because their funding obligations were not met. And doing so, that it's added some cost to the study. And so working together with the Army Corps, we've refocused, and we'd like to see the Army Corps work on 4 different areas: the Verdugo, Taylor Yard, Arroyo Seco, the confluence. And it's really a stretch of the river here that this alternative, what we call the alternative with restoration benefits and opportunities for revitalization here. And one of the things that it does for us, it's target key opportunity areas with the master plan. In doing this, there will be extra cost associated with this, and the city will partner with the Army Corps on this, and we're trying to reach a number that we can both, it's tough budget times. So far, we have not been able to reach that number. The number, in defense of our friends, is a little higher than we want to pay here, and so we're continually trying to negotiate with the Army Corps on this, and Daryl can add more, but we're hopeful that we can come to agreement. Right now, the study was approved for $7.3 million. We're trying to get it at a $9.3 million total study, with the city contributing half and the federal government the other half. And I'll let Daryl say anything.
Well, I think Gary Lee summed it up pretty well. We have been working vigilantly to try to resolve some of the cost issues. I think we're about $1.5 million too high, and need to keep looking at the scope and asking ourselves, do we really need to do this part? Do we, can we cut that out and still meet to the expectations of the city, and plan to continue doing that? I'm still hopeful.
Great. Well, I got to just say for the record, working with Colonel Magnus, your staff, yourself, sir, and Bureau of Engineering, I know we're all trying to find a way to make the most of our time while we're here and in the age of term limits, pushing this project that is long-term in nature within very real steps with very real results within the time we have is something that, I feel a lot of pressure because I keep looking at the clock knowing that I have 4 years left, which is 48 months, and they go really fast. But in the light of that challenge, in going back to Washington, D.C., I did get to speak with some of the Congress members and some of the representatives from President Obama's office, and let them know that if we figure out a different way of approaching these projects, there are very clear objectives in creating jobs, very clear objectives of dealing with water issues, transportation issues. And they understand it, but it's like we're both at different ends of the spectrum. We're trying to figure out a way to get to a middle point that allows us to move forward. So I'll be going back hopefully sooner than I think, so that we can get these meetings to a place where we can get real traction. But they were very, very excited. They want to know how to help, and we're looking to the Army Corps to give us some more guidance as to how we approach the political side of this, while we try to help us with the implementation side as administrators. So I appreciate the work we're doing.
One thing I want to add is that I did have the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to meet with Colonel Magnus on this, and I offered our staff to go over and actually have a couple workshops with the Army Corps, and we've done such. We've gone in the field with them. We really are trying everything we can to whittle this number down, because we also feel a sense of urgency along with you. The sooner we get this study done, let's get some demonstration projects. We need to show great progress, although we have some progress that we've gotten along the public right-of-way along the river. We really want to get down in that river, and so
Exactly.
we need this this feasibility study completed. So I'm happy to hear Daryl saying that we're still, no hope is given up yet. We've got to reach an agreement on it.
Great, great. Any questions or observations? Colleagues? Okay. Well, thank you. We'll continue with these reports, and they're very, very helpful. And hope to see you in 30 days. And have a good time and a productive time in your international endeavors. All right, folks.
Great.
Our next item?
I believe the planning department has a report on this item as well.
That's right.
Okay.
Hi.
Claire Bowen, City Planning. Just wanted to give you kind of a brief update on the Cornfield Arroyo Seco specific plan. We did have our scoping meeting for the initial study on March 16th. We had it at 2 different times. We had about 35 people come between the 2 different end times and got some really good comments and recommendations of additional things we should making sure that we're including in our study. The current draft is available on our website at cornfieldsla.googlepages.com, and we're certainly asking folks to take a look at the initial study and provide us any additional comments on that by March 30th, and then we'll be starting our official kind of environmental impact review study with the idea that we'll have a draft of that EIR available by the end of the summer, early fall, at which time we'll release it for public comments as well as release this version of the specific plan for official public comments at that time as well. But in the meanwhile, we're taking feedback certainly on the draft plan.
Great, great. In terms of this item, given all that has moved forward, if we can see from BOE in 30 days a solid recommendation on a local demonstration project, and specific strategy for finalizing the Army Corps and/or the Arbor study, so that way we can just keep this thing on a certain pace. That would be much appreciated. Okay, so that concludes item number 4.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is a report from the Bureau of Engineering in response to motion Garcetti Reyes Gruel on preparing a report with short and long-term recommendations to address safety, liability, water quality concerns, and consistent policies that balance the needs of river environment, such as wildlife and conservation, with human enjoyment of the LA River.
Okay, hi.
Hi, good afternoon. Carol Armstrong with the Bureau of Engineering LA River Project Office. You have before you the first draft of this river access and uses report. It's organized into 3 sections, looking at the ecological context of the river, the social context of the river, and the economic context of the river. And from this, we've synthesized some recommendations to the different departments. I have to say that the different departments have been great about participating in the bi-monthly interdepartmental task force on the river, and we've talked about a lot of these action items, and this is a way for us to move forward and operationalize in a really exciting way. So we're putting these 12 recommendations before you for your consideration, and also would like to ask that you consider to approve the proposed principles, the 5 that were proposed at the last ad hoc committee meeting when the motion was set forward in October, that are really the guiding principles for this document.
Okay.
And I just wanted to add a couple thank yous.
Please.
I wanted to thank both Lupe and Mitch, Council District 13, and Lupe from the ad hoc committee for their great input, and special thanks to Carol for generating a lot of words here that took a lot of effort, and so I wanted to make sure that and once again second Carol's comments on the department's input.
Great. So we can continue this item till the next meeting, and if we can work with engineering with your bureau. So we can come up with the top 5 recommendations that directly respond to the concerns. And that way, it'll give us that clear focus, and we can work from there. And also gives us time to digest this more. But appreciate your hard work. This is really, really good.
And we're also going to make it available for public review, right?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll move the other 7. Just
Okay. All right.
This is great work. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Our last item?
Item number 6 is a LADWP report in response to motion Garcetti Reyes relative to the DWP's policies and procedures for maintaining transmission line right-of-ways along the river.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
I'm Marvin Moon, LA Water and Power System. When I was here about a month ago, you had asked about a motion related to how the department maintains its transmission line right-of-ways. Looking into that motion, I found that it's 2 years old. We did respond twice in around that time frame when it was put out, but we did quite a investigation of the work that we're doing right now. Just as for a quick summary, the department, of course, has about 3,600 miles of transmission all around the state, out of state, and about 25% of the California transmission belongs to Water and Power. Along the LA River, it crosses over about 3,243 acres of right-of-way, and there's a correction in the transmittal that the general manager sent over, and that is that it says that LEWP owns and maintains 2,087 of those 3,200 acres, but in reality, it's the city of Los Angeles owns over 2,000 acres, of which 135 is owned by the department as a fee type arrangement. The other acreage is our easements. The good news is that the department's maintenance of its right-of-ways, at least for the property we own, has increased. It went from 180 days and is now on a 45-day cycle, so that's good. Additionally, we tightened up our you might say the phone tree as far as when people have complaints, who do they talk to? Basically, we talk to the 311 folks, and they're prepared to handle any sort of call. If a call comes in related to trash or nuisance abatement, they would call Water and Power, and we determine if that's a Water and Power property, or if it's a city property, or if it belongs to somebody else. If it's another city department, we'll contact them to have it cleaned up. If it's the departments, we'll go out and rush out and clean it ourselves. And if it's somebody that we don't know, we've talked to the building safety department with their nuisance abatement division, so they can work to get the property cleaned up. Additionally, of course, the department is active for secondary land use wherever we can, using nurseries and other community gardens, dog parks, and things to get the community and other people on the right-of-way. In that case, the department generates some revenue, and it's also maintained properly, as well as they take care of trash when people do dumping. So that's our report. We also included a map that shows the right-of-way along the LA River and the properties the department owns and the parts that are on the easement.
Okay, any questions, Counselor?
No, thank you for this. One of the things, I'm sure you don't mind, what we'll try to do is with some of the, all these properties and rights-of-ways get some sort of issue that needs some service. So we're gonna. I don't know if you've cold called it or tried it yet, but we're gonna try the system. So I'm gonna instruct my deputy to find something,
Great.
going wrong along there, and then let's work with whether it's city department or DWP if we happen to find anything that doesn't work in that system. I appreciate really that phone tree being tightened up. I think that's a big step forward. So I don't know if you've tested it yet, but
I haven't tested it. I'm dying to try it.
Yeah, and do it anonymously. I always call in my potholes, not as Council President Garcetti, but just, Mike from Silver Lake or something to test the system. And I think we can try the same thing, yeah.
Okay.
But that was my predecessor.
One thing that I want to make sure we continue these quarterly reports.
Yes.
And if you can include your operations and maintenance schedules or what it is that you're cleaning up, that would help.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm asking is many of our council offices work with nonprofits, and they are doing a lot of the cleanup work. We have the river keepers. I used to call them river rangers, but the river keepers. And we do a lot of work. And what I'm finding is that they're actually cleaning out a lot of the stormwater facilities that Department of Water and Power is supposed to be responsible for. A lot of the channels that Bureau of Street Service is responsible for. These nonprofits are doing this work. So this notion of leveraging those resources and creating something bigger by working with youth and offering them jobs and actually making the place safer and cleaner. And when we have rain and the kind of flows that we get, having these areas cleaned out and actually functioning and not being clogged up with debris and bulky items goes a long way. So from that point of view, who can we talk to from your shop to try to figure out a strategy? Because there are quite a few nonprofits. You have the Friends of the LA River, or the River Keepers, Northeast Trees, Aztec Rising, and then we have some of the church groups that come forward, Tiger from the Korean,
Oh, yeah, Tiger from Pava?
Pava. I mean, there's a whole list.
Okay.
And it's like we're all working in our own little universe, and we're all working on the same area, so.
Yeah, we could coordinate.
Right.
When I was last here, you asked for a power contact and a water contact, and our power contact is Eduardo Malacon, and he's in the back over here.
Eduardo, where's that brave soul? There he is. Come on up.
And the water contact is under Marty Adams. And he has
Marty Adams?
Yeah, he has a person for that.
So when we contact you, sir, what is the nature of the calls you expect?
Usually okay, my name is Eduardo Malacon. Good afternoon, council members. I receive complaints sometimes of residents that live around our right of way, and we handle those with our field guys to clean and remove, can be trash or something.
So you have like a chain link fence that's falling apart, that's full of debris and trash, that's you guys?
We handle that.
Okay. So like over. If it's under the power lines, it's typically your property, right?
No.
No?
That's what I was saying. Only 135 acres are actually owned by the department. The rest are easements. It's almost like having a pole line down the back of your property.
Right.
We
Gotcha.
maintain those lines, but the property belongs to someone else.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps. So I appreciate you coming here and sharing that, and did we get his number? All right. Okay, folks.
Thank you.
So, again, we will have these quarterly reports, and I appreciate your support, and we'll move forward.
Thank you.
We only have one person on public comment, and that's Mr. Williams. He doesn't want to, okay. All right, so we asked everyone, they want to speak? Tomorrow, all right. You'll know where to find us. Okay, folks, have a great day. This meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.